today's video, we'll be discussing 8 things I wish I knew before getting into data, and some common misconceptions in this space. Number 1, you don't need a background in statistics. First and foremost, it's important to know that you can break into data without a background in STEM, specifically maths and statistics. A lot of what you need, you can learn on the job. In order to be a successful data scientist, you do need to have sufficient knowledge of statistics to be able to explain the significance of the data. I personally wasn't a huge fan of statistics, but I felt the need to master it when I first entered the industry. Once in the industry, I realized that data transformation and manipulation was much more my forte. And that's what led me down the path of data engineering. So if you're like me and you realize that statistics is really not your thing, there are many other roles in data you can consider. For example, data analysis, data engineering, analytics engineering, which I go into a lot more in my previous videos. Number 2, so not all roles require Python, but data engineering does. Though Python is a commonly used programming language and mentioned in most job descriptions, it's not actually that common to need it in most data roles. Being able to modify existing code and read other people's code is usually sufficient for most data roles. However, for the purposes of data engineering, the ability to use Python is becoming increasingly important and gaining popularity. In general, Python is quite popular for a number of reasons, mainly to do with its ease of use and its access to many libraries. In addition to this, its wider application across multiple industries, for example, AI, data mining, and machine learning, make it quite useful if you ever want to switch industries within data. Number 3, SQL is relatively easy and important. A common misconception about SQL is that it's quite difficult to learn and that Python is a lot more important. When I first entered the industry, I put a lot more emphasis and energy into learning Python over SQL. A common misconception we all have is that SQL is quite difficult to learn and that Python is a lot more important, but this is not necessarily true. I personally found SQL relatively easy to learn, and from witnessing my colleagues also try and learn it, it seems that the basics and the foundational SQL is quite easy to pick up. So just because the preconception is that it's quite difficult, doesn't necessarily mean it'll be difficult for you. The more difficult aspects of SQL come when you need to optimize your queries, and that's why I recommend that this is something that you should try and spend time on early on. In a future video, I'll touch on some resources you can use to intro you to SQL. Number 4. The tech industry is very male-dominated. This may seem obvious, but it wasn't something I truly understood until I experienced it. It's not uncommon to enter a company and find you're the only woman on your team. Male analysts and data scientists outnumber women 4-1. This proportion is even smaller if you're a person of color, trans, non-binary, or gender non-conforming. This can feel very alienating, and you can end up feeling quite isolated. However, it's important to know that you are not alone. There are many communities out there, both online and in person, where you can meet other women, people of color, or other minorities in tech. So some that I've personally worked for me are Ada's List, the Stack World, and Color in Tech. I personally found these resources and the people I met through them super useful when I first started my career in data. It's left me feeling a lot less alone in this space. In addition to this, it was through these connections that I realized that I was being underpaid in my first role. As a result of this, I was able to take the leap and start consulting and also kickstart my business. Number 5. Know your worth and negotiate your pay. Roles in data usually come with a very good salary and benefits, but there is often a lack of transparency around these and how it relates to your experience. So you have to be proactive when it comes to knowing your worth, i.e., do your research. Resources such as PayScale and Glassdoor can be very useful for understanding the salaries of other people in your position. In particular, PayScale, my personal favorite, is quite good because you can input your experience and it will tell you your salary in relation to everyone else on the market. Also, make sure you talk to your peers. Certain employers may have you thinking that it's not acceptable to be discussing your salaries, but I'm yet to hear a good reason for this, other than wanting your employees to not be well informed. So talk to your friends at work, because it will help you understand your pay in relation to theirs and your position in the company. And once you've done all this and feel like it's time to ask for a raise, though it's super uncomfortable, don't be afraid to ask. Those who don't ask, don't get. This may not directly always lead to a raise, but now that you know your worth, if the disparity between what you're being paid and what you know your worth is too large, this may be a sign that you need to look elsewhere for work. In a future video, I'll talk about how to quantify your worth, negotiate your pay, and look for more competitive deals on the market. Number 6, networking is key. As the 2 previous points demonstrated, networking is incredibly important. It can help you with determining your worth, offer you solace in an online community, and it can even lead you to your next role. Additionally, if you ever do decide to start your own business, having a good network is key. There are so many communities out there and it can get overwhelming quite quickly. So I advise you to pick a couple, 1 or 2 that you really feel a connection with and just immerse yourself fully. Go to events, get involved in talks online and just show up. Number 7, don't get sucked into grind culture. It's quite common within data to feel like you have to grind until you reach the top. In the media, on YouTube, on Instagram, we're consistently bombarded with hustle harder rhetorics, but this isn't good for our health. Working long hours has been associated with poor productivity and poor performance, and can quite quickly lead to burnout. Of course, there are moments when you will have to switch on and you will have to work quite long hours, but it's important to pace yourself so that you can be alert for those moments in time. In the end, it will only make you unhappy and your body and your mind will start to break down. For example, in one of my earliest roles, I got into a state of working from like 9 till midnight on a daily basis. And quite quickly, I started to feel unhappy in the role. I also experienced persistent migraines and like a deep fear and dread of wanting to go to work, because I knew that if I went in, I'd have to stay till midnight because that's the role and cycle I got into. So do yourself a favor and get some rest. I know it's super annoying when people tell you to get rest when you've got a to-do list that is never ending. The goal is not to complete the to-do list as fast as possible, but instead to be in your most optimal state so that you're able to continuously make progress sustainably through this to-do list. So do yourself a favor, look after your both mental and physical health and just get some rest. The grind is not the goal. Number 8, you'll never stop learning. Even though I've been in the industry for a reasonable amount of time, and I'm now running my own business, I'm still learning new things all the time. It may be tempting to think that one day you'll know it all, but the truth is, data is a forever evolving space. There will always be a new tool, a new program, and a new method for doing things. Even the most experienced professionals are consistently learning, so don't be afraid to take on new opportunities or training when they arise. This will only help you diversify your skills and increase your market value. So there you have it. Those are 8 things I wish I knew before getting into data. If you have any questions about anything I've mentioned, just comment down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. See you next time.